Welcome back to an episode of Clutch Gene Sports. I'm your host, Marco Martinez, with a very special guest, Emil Fragoso. Hopefully I said your last name right. I didn't even get to ask you that. From Sacktown Sports, 1140. Thank you, my man, for joining today. Appreciate you much, man.
Of course, Marco. Glad to be on. Glad to be on Clutch Gene Sports. Appreciate you reaching out to me and having me on. It's always great to support local channels like this, considering, I know you're also a recent college graduate. I'm also a recent college graduate of a couple of years ago, so I totally get it. Totally get trying to grow the brand and stuff. So just happy to be here, happy to be on.
And really appreciate that. So where can people, just before we get started and everything, just because I want to make sure I plug you and everything, where can people find most of your coverage for 49ers? I know you do Sacktown Sports, so I'm guessing you also cover the Kings. So you probably don't cover the better basketball team in the Northern California region, the Golden State Warriors, which is all fine and dandy. You have to cover the little brother, which for right now, you know what I'm saying? I have to be some shit talking here because I know you're possibly a Kings fan, I'm guessing.
Yes, sir, I am. Born and raised here in Sacramento, California, 30 minutes north of Sac. So very much a proud Kings fan of the 916. Look, I get it, little brother. I get it. We're coming up, though. We might have a little more playoff potential this year. My guy Keegan Murray might take a jump. I do have a lot of appreciation for Steph Curry, though. I think he's a wonderful basketball player. It's no real hatred. I'm not a fan of Draymond. That's just my personal thing, but I love everyone else. Hoping for the best for you guys, too, going forward.
I just had to throw that in there just because it's all a fun and game. I don't like Draymond myself. I don't like his antics and stuff like that. So
yeah,
just to pair on with you. But we're here to talk 49ers training camp today, and obviously you've been at every day of training camp. So throughout everything, obviously, in my opinion, I thought your coverage of day 1, day 2, wasn't able to see day 3 today because I was at a doctor's appointment. But I just love how you were giving live feed of tweeting out like what's going on and stuff like that. I thought, to me, that was phenomenal. No other reporter does that. Well, is that just something different you're trying to do, and you're trying to go in that kind of route to give people a first insight of what's going on at training camp?
Yeah, so to break down how training camp does work for the people who aren't in media circles, who aren't the credentialed media, you get basically 4 to 5 periods at the start to shoot footage and shoot, camera work, all that stuff. Once team drills start, though, the cameras go away. You can just observe. And so I want to give the fans, not only the faithful who are there, but also the faithful who aren't there, able to get out to training camp, because I know they raised the ticket prices this year, which was an interesting little flip to all of this. I want to give the faithful a chance to really understand what's happening, and kind of, I guess, a play-by-play to a degree of what's going on, because at the end of the day, with Niners especially, a lot of things that go into the regular season happen and start in training camp, right? Brock Purdy especially, was the last pick in the draft over almost 2 years ago. Trey Lance was going to be the guy, but it was Brock Purdy and his play beginning in training camp that I initially saw that got me curious about him. And eventually he got the preseason game against the Packers, and then so on. And here we are now 2 years later having a conversation about him potentially getting that mega bag next year. So giving 49ers faithful that inside scoop of not only like someone had a good play, but what happened in that play, I think is really, really important to describe for fans and faithful.
Absolutely. So first thing I want to get into is, I know obviously the biggest reason why a lot of the faithful feel like the 49ers lost the Super Bowl was because of the offensive line, right? And today we were able to see a little bit more of the rookie right guard that they drafted. Dominic Puny got first team reps with the starting offense, but the reason why he got those reps weren't because he's earned those. It was because Spencer Burford and John Feliciano weren't practicing today. What is your take on the O-line competition, as well as Trent Williams not being there? Like, that's a huge talk of 49ers training camp. So what's going on with Trent Williams, as well as what are you seeing from the competition, and who do you expect to start at right guard, at least from the first week? I know it's way premature to give a starting right guard, but if you had to take a guess, who do you think it would be?
Yeah, well, to start on the right guard conversation, I do think right now John Feliciano, he did mention this. He's coming back for one more year. His last dance, per se, is going to be this year. It looks like he's going to retire after this season. So John Feliciano, I think, is the incumbent right guard spot. And frankly, he earned it down the stretch run of the 2023 season. Was phenomenal, was really, really good in the Super Bowl before he got hurt. And then obviously Spencer Burford came in, who the Niners are really, really high on, but did not take that that leap we wanted to see in year 2, unfortunately. So he had to go down the pecking order a little bit and had to work on a couple things. Now here we are going into year 3 for him, and it's very much a competition at right guard. Even Chris Forster, their run game coordinator, mentioned that today, that it's very much a competition at right guard between these guys. And yes, Burford's a guy they're very high on. Feliciano's a guy who's earned those snaps not only with other teams but with the Niners last year. But even Puny, who we've talked about, Dominic Puny, their fourth rounder, or their third rounder, I should say, it has been really, really good and someone they've really liked and they've talked about. But I will say it with Puny, as much as Forrester likes him, as much as the Niners like him, it's going to be a learning curve for him, right? Every single rookie goes through that learning curve, and he's a guy that played a lot of tackle in college for Kansas and also played guard too. Yes, he's played all over the map, but he was a lot of tackle in Kansas. So I think it's important to understand that this is a guy who they're high on, but they don't want to throw him to the fire like they did with Burford. They want to let him get acclimated a little bit more, let him understand, what playing for the Niners is like, what the NFL grind is like, and get his sea legs under him. And I think that's where Puny's at right now. But they have a lot of hype in him, and he's looked pretty solid so far in those snaps. I wasn't able to get out there today, but from the clips that I did see, he was very, very good. And yesterday he was very good too. I was on hand yesterday. He looked very good, very much the part with the second and third teamers. And then over to left tackle, which is the big whale of them all, right? Is that Trent Williams is not there right now, which is a bit of a surprise to us media, but not really to Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. Actually, they were kind of preparing for this potentially of Trent not, asking out or anything like that, not asking for a trade like Ayuk is, but it's more so he just wants guaranteed money. Like at the end of the day, Trent Williams is arguably, if not in my opinion, the best left tackle in the NFL still. It's not really that close. Trent Williams is going to year 14, 3 years left in his deal, 20, 22, 25, but no guaranteed money. And if you're Trent Williams, who's 36 years old and had a couple nagging injuries last year, getting up there in age, you have a right to ask for guaranteed money, I think, considering your value to the 49ers. I mean, it goes quarterback, linebacker at Fred Warner, and then pretty much left tackle in terms of importance to a football team, having your blindside guy be locked down. Trent Williams is that guy and has been, and they got him in 2020. And so it makes a lot of sense. The Niners kind of thought it could happen. They're working through it, but I think it's a domino effect now because not only does it matter for Trent to get that money, but once that gets done, that frees up more cap space for other deals to happen, including Brandon Ayuk.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Brandon Ayuk, who's not there. So it does sound interesting because obviously someone has to step up and replace Brandon Ayuk. Now, there's uncertainty if he'll actually end up getting that contract extension if he gets traded. Obviously, he has that trade request on the table that he requested. What are you seeing from some of the guys? I know first day I was texted by someone there, and this was a reporter, someone who's credentialed because there's no fans in attendance yet, and he was like, dude, I don't know what it is, but Danny Gray looks like the best receiver on the field right now. He's like, he's running very crisp routes. His speed is on display. His hands look good. Is Danny Gray, don't call it a comeback, but is he coming back, and is he going to be the receiver that no one was expecting to actually have a breakout year? Everyone's expecting Jacob Cowing, the first round pick, Ricky Pearsall. Is Danny Gray going to have that emergence? Well, Brandon Ayuk's gone, or what did you see from the first 2 days that you were there in terms of the receiver room? Was it struggling? Do they really need to make sure they pound the table and get Brandon Ayuk's contract done? What's it looking like there?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're struggling, Marco. I would say that they definitely are missing their number one route runner and Brandon Ayuk, but there's a lot of talented receivers on this roster, including Danny Gray, who missed all of last season with an AC joint sprain in his shoulder and which wasn't the same because of it. And I think that year off actually helped Danny Gray learn how to be an NFL receiver, not only be a pass catcher, be a complete wide receiver. And what does that mean in Kyle Shanahan's offense? That means being a blocking and willing teammate. And I think he's learning that and getting out of the proverbial doghouse of Kyle Shanahan, as they say. And Danny Gray on day one was very crisp, was definitely the number one receiver. I watched and actually broke out a breakout story on sacktownsports.com. You can check that out there. It was a really, really good showing for Danny Gray, who a guy that many of us forgot. I know we had that early standout in preseason week 1 of 2022 with Trey Lance throwing that deep ball against the Packers. But since then, hasn't really had much. He has one career catch for 10 yards, and that was in his rookie season. So besides that, we haven't seen Danny Gray. So to see him out there and running crisp routes and looking the part of what he was supposed to be when he came out of SMU is a really big deal for this Niner team, and really only a bonus for their receiving core. But I will say there are other guys, and it kind of plays into the factor of the increase of competition brings out the best of others. Iron sharpens iron, and that's a cliche and a time-old saying, but it is the truth. Iron sharpens iron. The emergence of Jacob Cowing as a rookie, he's looked incredibly good in his first couple of days. Definitely an element of this offense that they could use. Ricky Pearsall is coming back next week. Deebo Samuel is the leanest and the meanest he has looked in 3 years. No shit. I am being completely honest with you. He looks phenomenal. So because of all that, you have to go out before him, because Danny Gray especially is vying for a roster spot, not a starting spot or being the 4th or 5th. He's trying to get a roster spot, and frankly could have been cut last year if not for the injury. So because of that, it's very much a prove it year for Danny Gray in year 3. And so far he's showing the part. Day 2 was not as good, but still good. He had a couple of nice catches over the middle, had one drop, but that was nice coverage by the corner by Samuel Womack. Besides that, though, the Niners receiving core definitely looks like it's missing Ayuk, but there's definitely strong candidates to, I'm not going to say replace him, because I'm not sure you can replace Ayuk that easily, but at least kind of be a little bit of a
storm in a way,
a little bit of a softener right now, at least early on in training camp. And it's still early on in training camp. We got to see him in preseason and in action for sure.
You mentioned Deebo, right? And Deebo's biggest thing, it's never been whether he's in shape or out of shape. Like, in my opinion, I feel like even when Deebo's out of shape, he's still a phenomenal player with the ball in his hands. How's his route running looking? Because I know that's something that he posted a lot on social media. Like, that's what he was working on, his route running abilities. Is he able to create separation now? Is that something that looks improved? Because that was a major flaw of his throughout his entire, at least since he got into the 49ers. But last year, it was very apparent in the Super Bowl. Or is it the same?
I think it's definitely improved. I think it's more so improved because he's slimmed down, right? Deebo does carry a lot of weight in the midsection as well as in his lower body. He's a very much not a slender person. He's got a little bit of a trunk in the back there. And that's kind of how he plays football. He's a wide back, right? He's not just a wide receiver. He's a wide back that also goes out of the backfield as a running back. But Deebo this year has really kind of looked at the market and looked at what the value is in terms of NFL franchises. And I think he's looking more to be considered a wide receiver going forward than a wide back, because wide backs, especially Chris McCaffrey, they don't get paid as much money. Wide receivers get paid more money. That's just the reality of the situation. So Deebo and his route running absolutely is better right now. He looks very, very crispy. I mean, he's had a couple crossing routes over the middle that were excellent. Deebo looks to be, I wouldn't say ready for week 1 right now, but give him a week or two, I could see him out there on the field just cooking people. Honestly, he looks phenomenal right now.
That's good to hear, because that's something I wanted to see from training camp or hear out of training camp is Deebo's route running is on display, or it looks like it's improved a little bit. The talk of training camp, though, like I think so far the standout player that everyone I've talked to, whether they've been there every single day or been there one day, that player is Jordan Mason. And it's obviously, you talked about wide back a little bit. He's starting to kind of make himself a little wide back, right? Like, he's never been that route runner or anything like that, but I heard his route running looks good. He's caught a pass every day of training camp. Is Jordan Mason for real? Is this something like we should actually take note of and like, hey, all right, he's running back 2 on the pecking order, or is he still behind Elijah Mitchell and he's never going to touch the field?
You know, currently right now and how the Niners are stacking it, I would say Elijah Mitchell is right behind Christian McCaffrey in terms of the depth chart. Jordan Mason's number 3 on there. But I do think Jordan Mason could make a play for number 2 and be that kind of, you know, Christian McCaffrey has called him the closer, Mariano Rivera, in the past. And I think he's much more of a complete running back now because he is showing more of an improved pass catching skill. Is he ever going to be a wide back? Probably not. It's not who he is. He's a running back. He's a LeGarrette Blount type player. I mean, he's a downhill bruiser, which is frankly a player the Niners should lean on more, especially late in games, to ice stuff. Because when you're going after Christian McCaffrey for 45 minutes, and then you bring in a fresh Jordan Mason who is a bulking person, that's just going to be hard to stop for anybody behind this Niners line, even if it is average to above average. So I want to see Jordan Mason get more snaps. And I remember sitting in the press box last year thinking, why the hell are they not giving this guy more snaps? Every single time he goes out there, he looks good. I think it's just more so trying to be more explosive because he very much is a good running back and finds holes and creases. It's just his explosiveness hasn't been there in the first 2 years. And I think he's worked on his body, worked on getting more athletic, more agile, definitely taken what Christian McCaffrey has said and those guys around him of just being excellent. And I think Jordan Mason is primed for a breakout year 3.
That's great to hear from the Jordan Mason front, and because I felt like he's one of the better runners on the 49ers roster when he has the ball in his hand. Like you don't, it's hard to tackle dudes like that. It kind of runs. A lot of the Niner fans on Twitter at least have nicknamed him Baby Marshawn or a mini Marshawn Lynch. Like kind of like that's the style he runs like. He's very angry when he runs. Which rookies out of the guys that are actually able to practice, obviously Pearsall's not there, have you took notice of? Because I heard there's somebody that no one was really expecting to have a good start to camp like that. Is Mustafa the rookie that? I said his name. Should have let you say it. But what are you seeing from the rookies? I should have just let you say it. But what are you seeing from the rookies, my man?
Yeah, I was just about to ask offense or defense, because defense we've had some standouts so far, and Malik Mustafa, my goodness. I was over the moon when they drafted him this year. Same with Jair Brown last year. I wanted him to take another safety last year. Jair Brown was the right pick, was phenomenal, and had that Super Bowl pick. Malik Mustafa, I'm not going to say he's going to fall in line with Jair Brown because that's high expectations. But Mustafa so far through 3 days of camp has looked the part of definitely eyeing for not just a roster spotter being the number 3, but being the number 2 right behind Jair Brown, especially if Talanoa Hufanga does go on the PUP to start the regular season, which is 100% a possibility considering he has not practiced and is in a knee brace right now, still recovering from an ACL tear week 11. So Malik Mustafa looks the part. Nick Sorensen, the 49ers new defensive coordinator, I was there yesterday talking with him. Over the freaking moon about Malik Mustafa, how intelligent he is. And what's funny is that Nick basically said, you guys haven't seen anything yet, because once he put the pads on, that guy can hit people. And so if you add up the intelligence, the poise, the maturity, the tackling ability, the ability to be a ball hawk, he kind of feels like a complete safety already as a rookie. And because he's an older safety, maybe that is. But I think this is a guy that could absolutely get some starting snaps this year.
I hope when he puts the pads on, he understands everyone on the team is his teammate, and you're knocking everyone out. Because
this ain't college. You're not buying to make sure you have a scholarship. This is a teammate. You have a secure contract.
Because like watching his college film, like he's leveling dudes and he's making sure he's laying the boom. Now there's another guy in the secondary who's a rookie. What have you seen from Renardo Green? Because one thing I did take notice when the Niners did draft him, and on my scouting report, when I did his scouting report, it was lacks size. Like he's a smaller corner, so it's like you have to find the right spot for him. I think that's more so in the nickel, but even then, how do you think he's gonna fare when teams start running the ball directly at him? And we're still early, no pads are on or anything like that. But what have you seen from Renardo Green?
Yeah, Renardo's got limited spot stuff, obviously with the twos right now, because most of the corners are healthy. Actually, really all the corners are healthy, which doesn't feels very weird to say that the whole team is pretty much healthy, but here we are in training camp and they're mostly healthy. Look, Renardo Green's going to have a learning curve. He absolutely is. But I think that's going to be offset by the fact that Brandon Staley, the 49ers' new defensive associate, whatever you want to call him, they haven't given us a title yet what he is. He's definitely helping these cornerbacks and maturing them. You saw the work he's done with Deommodore Lenoir already. He's working with Renardo Green. The one thing I have noticed with Renardo Green, that's something he's going to have to work on and will probably get flagged a couple times in preseason. He's a little handsy. He's a little bit handsy off the line of scrimmage, and maybe that's just the adjustment to the NFL. But this is a guy who was dominant in press coverage and in man coverage last year at Florida State. You know, there's that big game against Malik Neighbors at LSU in college that he was phenomenal and really stopped him. And I think taking Renardo Green was a surprise at the time when they took him. I think it was the right pick because this is a guy, they want to play more man coverage. They want to play more physical, more dominant. And I do think while he is a little bit lacking in size for a prototypical outside corner, I think he could eventually either slide in or play out. I think he just has versatility, and the Niners just value versatility across the board. Same with Deommodore Lenoir. Love the versatility he has to play both outside and inside. Sure, would he be better on the inside of the nickel because of stature? Absolutely. But I think they just want versatility to all right, we don't have to roll out a depth squad cornerback. We don't have to roll out, roll the dice with Ambry Thomas again. We just have a variety of people that we can throw at them if Diamador, Lenore, or Tavarius were, knock on wood, get hurt by any chance. I think Renardo Green would do just fine. He'd have his rookie moments, absolutely, but I think this is a guy that will grow and learn to blossom because I'll tell you right now, that boy a dog. That boy is a dog. He wants it. He was very honest with us on draft night about how the Niners have not made a mistake. I'm going to prove it to y'all. And this is a guy who, definitely is out there to make a point. And I think this Niner secondary is going to be improved this year.
And that's good to hear because one of my bigger concerns was how he was going to fare. His scouting report does say he's very handsy, especially at the top of the route, start of the route. Like that's kind of his style. So having to adjust to the NFL and understanding like they call little holds that they probably wouldn't call in the ACC. But I'm going to bring up this question, not necessarily a question, it's kind of more of a comment, but Leon Sandcastle here says, no one believes me, but I think Garendo is a wide back in development, bigger, stronger, and faster than Deebo with the receiver experience. What was your takes from Garendo? Obviously, he got injured really early, but were you at OTAs and everything like that? Were you able to see Garendo and stuff like that?
Yeah, I was at mandatory minicamp, and he did look good. He looked very quick on his feet for being a bigger stature guy, a thicker guy, kind of a Doug Martin type player, I'd say, for Isaac Garendo, which is another element of this Niners team that they could absolutely have in that running back. You never have enough quality running backs, and Doug Martin, while it was a short-lived career, he was called the muscle hamster for a reason. Isaac Garendo absolutely plays similar to that, and I think that I think if he was able to stay healthy, and unfortunately hamstring issues have nagged him in the past. They nagged him in college, and unfortunately he went down. I was on the sideline when it happened, and I was worried. I'll be honest with you, Marco. I was very worried when it happened because he didn't move his leg for a good 15 seconds. They kind of stretched it out, and then he got up and kind of hobbled off. And thankfully he seems to have just pulled it. It's just a strain. He should be back in a week or two. But it's something you got to watch for, and it's not what you want to see for a rookie running back that you take in the fourth. And figure out how do I want to have this depth chart because they have so many options, right? You have Christian McCaffrey, who's going to be your superstar. You have Elijah Mitchell, who 100% looks like recovered from those knee injuries. We'll get to him in a second. And then obviously with Jordan Mason, who has improved in his explosiveness as well. There's not enough mouths to feed sometimes with this Niner offense. And so Garendo, unfortunately, is going to have to, when he does come back from this minor setback, have to prove it in short amount of time. And I think he will get run in preseason because they don't want to run these running backs into the ground, especially McCaffrey and even Elijah Mitchell. I think that Garendo is going to have to prove it on the gridiron during a game if he wants to get these snaps going into the regular season.
And if he doesn't prove it in training camp in preseason, it's all right. He'll be a Cam Latu, and it puts you right into that Cam Latu question I wanted to ask you. He'll be placed on the IR before the season starts. Mm-hmm. Niners will be able to redshirt him in a way, which they did a Cam Latu. Last year, I was at training camp. Cameron Latu does not look like an NFL player from what I saw last year. Does he look like an NFL player now? Because last year I was confident that he should not make the roster, and immediately Niners placed him on the IR. What does he look like right now?
Yeah, we haven't seen too much of Cam Latu. I'll be honest with you. He's kind of down in the pecking order. Now there's a reason they went out and got Logan Thomas, okay? There just is. They needed more security behind George Kittle, more veteran presence behind George Kittle because the rest of their tight end room is a bunch of new faces, right? No Ross Dwelly, no Tyler Kroft of a few years ago, no others as they're used to for this Niners team. So they have to go out and get guys that they can trust. And Logan Thomas, while he's dealt with the injury bug in years past, Logan Thomas is now on this Niners team and looked pretty good and pretty healthy. But for Cam Latu, he's going to have to prove it every day in training camp with how many snaps he gets and how many reps he gets and just prove that he is more than just wanting to be a starter, more than just want to be a pass-catching tight end, which is what he was at Alabama. He's going to be a complete tight end and a willing blocker, a willing special teamer potentially, because it's going to be hard to get these reps, especially considering the Niners already viewed getting a veteran over trusting his process. And that's just kind of where he's at. He's behind the 8 ball. And when you get behind the 8 ball with the Niners, it's hard to come back sometimes.
And you mentioned 8 ball. I know Braden Willis is number 9 for the Niners, but it's pretty dang close, right? Yep. Is he behind Braden Willis as well?
Yes, he's definitely behind Braden Willis as well. They like Braden Willis. And Even last year going into the draft when they took Latu, I was like, that's a little bit high for Cameron Latu. I wasn't as thrilled with his coverage. When they took Braden Willis in the 7th, I was much happier with the Braden Willis selection because I think he's just shown more as a complete tight end. There's so much more to being a tight end than just catching passes, especially with the Niners. You have to be a good blocker. If you're not a good blocker, and Cameron Latu has had to work on that for over a year now, you're not going to get run. You're just not going to get run with this Niners team. And Braden Willis has shown that he's a more complete tight end than Latu right now. Maybe that can change, though. We got a month, right? We have a month. We have 3 preseason games. Let's see what the kid can do. I'm rooting for the guy. He's a very nice guy, Cam Latu, and we'll see how it rolls out. But right now, it definitely is George Kittle, Logan Thomas, Braden Willis, I'd say.
And that's pretty cool to see because it kind of confirms. So I don't know about you, but I do a lot of scouting on the side. Like that's kind of like my biggest thing is during NFL draft season, I'm scouting almost every player that's draft eligible. It's kind of ridiculous. My wife hates it. She absolutely hates it. And when they took Braden Willis in, I believe the 6th round or 7th round, 6th or 7th round, I immediately said I was live and I was like, that's a better tight end than Cam Latu. I was like, I would have taken Braden. I would have been like, okay, if Niners took Braden Willis in the 3rd, like they see the potential. Like he's a move tight end where I see the potential there. They see him as that Jordan Reed kind of tight end, and glad he's doing good. Hopefully Cameron Latu picks it up. On the opposite side, I know we're going back and forth offense defense. I want to ask D Winters, and then Jonas has a question in the chat. So D Winters and Jalen Graham, do you see the difference between those guys at the linebacker position?
Yeah, well, they also play a little bit different roles, obviously. D Winters is more of an off-ball linebacker, and Jalen Graham, they really trusted with the mic duty last year, and that was a real good sign of the faith they had in him to become potentially a leader with the mic in the middle. D Winters, though, absolutely has the edge right now. Fred Warner has been very outspoken about how D Winters was the biggest winner of OTAs in the offseason programs. D Winters 100% has a chance to, if not be the 4th, be the 3rd linebacker. Devondre Campbell does not play well, especially with Dre Greenlaw on ice. He can get some extended run. D Winters has incredible athleticism for a linebacker. His ability to go sideline to sideline is absolutely what the Niners look for. Absolutely what Johnny Holland wants to see out of that core. And especially when you have guys like KJ Wright, who's now new there in San Francisco, teaching this young and talented linebacker who just needs to get the fundamentals down. You know, the Niners have a philosophy of we want to draft the guys that have certain traits because we know we can teach them the right way to play football. We can teach them the right way to play 49ers football. And D Winters is a huge example of that. He is an incredibly talented player, maybe a little undersized for being a Mike or a traditional linebacker, but his speed and ability to get after people and tackling and go coast to coast is things that they look for. And as long as they can keep teaching him, he can keep improving on the fundamental aspect, everything will come together at some point. So don't expect D to immediately just pop, but it could come, and it could come in different spots. And that's what I'm excited the most about for D Winters is that he's taken his rookie year where he didn't get a ton of run and really improved on it and really taken it to heart and has went into off season and looked at himself in the mirror and goes, I have to get better at every facet. I have to get better as a fundamental football player. And he has, and he's responded really well. And it's why guys like Fred Warner, who don't give out compliments lightly, has been super complimentary of him and as one of his, prodigies.
And what's crazy is I know you mentioned him being undersized. I had recently did a scouting seminar with an assistant general manager and a lot of scouts, and they actually talked about linebackers being smaller, right? Like they mentioned the position that they're drafting and everything like that. And he was like, honestly, he's like, that's one thing with the NFL. They're getting so much faster and the receivers getting smaller, running backs getting smaller and shiftier. He goes, you actually kind of got to go to the smaller linebackers. And he's like, when you look at those kind of linebackers, that actually fits the mold. And if you look at some of the better linebackers across the NFL, they're smaller speed guys. You have those guys like Fred Warner, but those are freaks of nature. That's why he's the best linebacker in the NFL because he has the size, he has the speed, and it's rare. Mm-hmm. It's rare for the NFL now to get complete linebackers out of college. But I want to get to this question real quick from Jonas because we talked a little about the base defense, and also I'm gonna have a question off of this as well. So Jonas goes, can you ask Emil about base down defense? I'm worried Collins, Hargrave are food in the run defense. I want you to include Kevin Givens here because I've been saying this for the last month and a half. The top 3 defensive tackles, they've never been above average. The top 3 defensive ends, they've never been above average. The top 3 defensive linebackers, they've never been above average. run defenders or average run defenders in the NFL.
Yeah.
You got Collins, Hargrave, and Kevin Givens. Those are your top three defensive tackles, with Jordan Elliott being probably your number 4th and number 3, and he's actually a good run defender. Are we in for a rude awakening when teams start running the ball at us?
The Niners pride themselves on defense. They pride themselves on run defense, especially the last few years. Last year, it took a massive dip from being one of the best in the NFL to one of the worst in the NFL, it felt like, for a while there. And I think this year, and there's a reason why Steve Wilkes was let go, because of the philosophies he was trying to teach was much more secondary heavy than base defense heavy, like Jonas is saying. And I think the inclusion of Nick Sorensen and guys like Brandon Staley and other guys who just want to adapt more to the Niners way of football, I think is going to help them get back to fundamentals, get back to Niners style. And in terms of Collins and Hargrave's issue was more, yes, he's more of a sack master, more of a tackler in the pass game. But it was more so Hargrave came into camp last year not in shape. I'm just going to be really frank about that. He was not in shape a lot of last year. And then he had that nagging injury and just never really kind of bounced back right. And that's why they brought Collins in, right? They let Eric Armstead go, who was a really good run defender. And he was one of the reasons why they had him there for so long. But they got Collins back for a 7th from Houston. And this is a guy who's very, very good. And a guy who is more of a complete guy, has still had 41 combined tackles, 19 solo, 22 assisted, 5 sacks. I mean, he does stuff across the board. Malik Collins does stuff across the board. And let me be honest, this guy, for his size, super explosive. Like, it's very clear, even not during the scrimmages and just doing drills, he gets off the line like that. He really does. He's a very, very fast person, a very explosive person for his size. And so in terms of the base defense and run defense, the inclusion of Malik Collins, who I think is probably the most underrated signing for the Niners this offseason next to Isaac Yiadom. I think he's going to be a really big part of this team. And for Hargrave, it's just about being more consistent, right? Being more consistent all around, not just being good in pass, but also being good in run. And I think he really took last season's underwhelming year coming off of getting a massive deal and took it to heart and really worked out this offseason and worked his ass off.
And I think, too, we also can't really take much into count on the run defense yet. Obviously, run defense day 1 didn't look great. Day 2 looked better. No pads are on, so you can't really see what's going on in the trench and anything. They're not really hitting each other. No run blocking. But like that's where it's going to get fun, is when the pads get put on. Is how does the run defense look? Are they actually stuff? Are they actually stuff in the run? Is Collins and Hargrave true liabilities in the run game? And I think that's where Chris Kasarik talked about him. And I kind of want to get your opinion on this, so I'm going to bring up Kenny's little take. Is Evan Anderson, does he have any chance to succeed and make the roster? Or what did you see from, or not what have you, but is he that kind of guy who might make the roster because of run defense?
I think it's absolutely a possibility. Look, they're looking for more guys that can just have more depth, right? They have missed having guys that can just be spot plug-in guys, spot rotational guys. Kevin Givens is one of those guys that's definitely gone up the ranks. Jordan Elliott as well, one of those guys has gone up the ranks. Evan Anderson could be that guy, but another guy to watch out for, who I'm a big fan of personally as well as on the field, Kalia Davis. I think Kalia Davis could also be a guy that could absolutely have a run this year, coming back from a torn ACL his rookie year and kind of getting more rehab, more time in there. Kalia looks much more explosive and, man, a great human being. I'm really rooting for that guy. So I think they have a lot more options this year than in previous years, and I think they're going to be just fine in the run game, much better than last year. But we will see once pads go on. Even with pads on, they're not trying to kill each other. They're trying to be teammates. They're just trying to get off and have good plays. So we won't see the full extent of the potential until we get to week 1 of the preseason against the Titans.
I get excited when you say Kalia Davis, because not because of the player, because how good of a person he is, man. Like,
man,
to me, he's one of my favorite Niners because of his personality and who he is as a person. Like, that's for me, the play. I think he could be a really good defensive tackle for the 49ers, kind of like in that mold of not necessarily how good this player was when I say his name, but he has DJ Jones style of play, where that bigger guy, very athletic in the inside. So very interesting to see him develop going into, I believe, his 3rd year into the NFL, recovering from that ACL and everything like that. A couple more questions before I know want to stay respectful for your time and everything like that. For me, quarterback 2 is an issue, obviously, because those 2 quarterbacks have struggled. But I want to get to Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy looked really, really sharp the first couple of days. And then today he starts taking deeper shots, obviously installs probably deeper routes that they're running, starts taking deeper shots. And as he's taking these deeper shots, none of them are being completed. Throw into double coverage, throw an interception to Jair Brown. That's, to me, I'm not going to kill him for interceptions in training camp this year. Like last year, I was a little more critical on it because we didn't know what he was going to be. We know he's not going to throw interceptions in the regular season, but throwing into double coverage is an issue. What do you see from Brock Purdy this year? Obviously, the rumors came out that, or for the most part, the report came out that he was recovering his elbow all the way up until November of last season, and then he finally took off and was finally healthy, full go. Is he the real deal? Like, you can tell us the truth. You can tell us the truth.
I will tell you the truth because I've been a Brock Purdy guy since Green Bay Week 1 preseason of 2022. Brock Purdy is the real deal. It was very clear Week 1 of preseason that there was something about him, and even now, 2 years removed and a year removed from his UCL, this guy's the real deal. Look, the biggest thing of Brock Purdy right now is that he's in total command of this offense. It feels very much that he's in total command of this offense. And while, there's a famous saying of Kyle of just let it rip, Brock Purdy just lets it rip. He trusts he trusts what he sees. And it might, sometimes it goes into risky coverage, but as we saw in the regular season, in the postseason, that man just makes plays. He's able to fit the tightest of windows to a point that actually seems almost impossible. Brock Purdy is definitely here to stay, and while he threw a pick today, absolutely overthrew a couple balls, he's still adjusting to his arm strength, right? He put on about 5 to 10 pounds of muscle. Even Kyle Shanahan joked the other day, called him baby Bosa legs, because that man's quads are popping right now. Brock Purdy has put that work in the weight room, and the extra zip on that ball is very clear from day 2 yesterday when I was there, and even today. He's just, again, they're still rusty. Brock admitted it himself. They're still a little bit rusty. It's the first week of training camp. They haven't been together all summer. Brock's been working on strength and working on conditioning, working on getting better with his arm, doing that 3D modeling in Florida. Nothing compares to being on the field with your teammates, with your coaches, getting reps in. As time goes on, those will go away. Remember, last year he threw 11 interceptions in training camp. He was a pick machine in training camp. I remember because I watched them happen. And then we go to week 1 of the preseason, or week 2 of the preseason, and he goes in that touchdown drive to start, and everything is forgiven, everything is good. And here we are a year later talking about Brock Purdy as the guy who potentially could make $60 million plus after this season. And that's the reality. That's just the reality, is that Brock Purdy is 100% the real deal, not only on the field, but off the field and how he carries himself.
Absolutely. Obviously, there's a quarterback 2 competition there between Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs. We're in trouble if Brock has to miss a game or more, because those 2 quarterbacks, from what I've been told, have been awful. Like, obviously, Brandon Allen is Mr. Consistent. Yep. He's going to do what he normally does, like nothing impressive. But I've heard Josh Dobbs has just been inaccurate, bad reads. And he played, and one thing is we can't really say, like, oh, he's getting adjusted to Kyle Shanahan's offense, because he played in a similar offense in Minnesota. So he has an understanding of this offense. What's the quarterback 2 position battle looking like, and should they bring someone else in?
I wouldn't say you got to bring someone else in, because there's also Tanner Mordecai, who's number 4 there, just hanging out. So there, you can give him a little run potentially too. All jokes aside, Josh Dobbs is brought in to be number 2 quarterback, but through the first couple of days of training camp, it's very clear that Brandon Allen is the number 2 quarterback right now in the backup, because he's had a year of being under Kyle Shanahan, a year of being in this system, and he has been Mr. Consistent, looked the part. Yes, he almost had a near pick into tight coverage with Malik Mustafa on day 1 of open training camp. But Brandon Allen has looked much sharper this year than he did last year. He's looked the part. He looks like he understands this offense and the system and how to get the ball to people. And Josh Dobbs looks like he hasn't, that Lynn Sandy run wore off, unfortunately. And as much as I want to root for Josh Dobbs and root for the Pasternak, he's a phenomenal human being. He has to prove it on the gridiron if he wants to be the backup quarterback for this Niners team. Otherwise, he could be even cut potentially going into the season. I don't think they will, because I think they want a trusted guy that they believe can not only make football plays as a veteran, but also extend with his legs. And that's definitely something Josh Dobbs can do. But I think it's Brock Purdy, and man, I hope Brandon Allen can be at least competent. I hope Brandon Allen can be at least Nick Mullins, and that's kind of how it feels sometimes with this Niner. It's Brock Purdy or bust a little bit, but I do think Brandon Allen has stepped up his play a little bit too.
So it looks like JD Durham saying that the Niners signed Josh Love for a practice workout. They might have brought him in for a practice workout. And a lot of times when you bring in quarterbacks for workouts, typically it's to get other guys reps, right? Whether it's a receiver, they might be bringing in a receiver, running backs and stuff like that. Obviously, with Isaac Guerrendo's injury, you don't want to have everyone getting a much more reps than they should. So that's impossible. So I don't know what the quarterback workout was. Are they trying to bring in a receiver, running back, corner? Sometimes like to have quarterbacks there so they can show that they can high point and stuff like that. But also the quarterback is to work out. So that's pretty cool to see there. Last question before we get out for here is Brandon Staley and Nick Sorensen. Those are the two new defensive minds on the side. Now we see a lot of Brandon Staley working with the cornerbacks and teaching them how to press technique and that kind of stuff. And then you also see Nick Sorensen kind of staying near Kyle Shanahan during practice. Have you noticed anything different from Nick Sorensen, Steve Wilks and Nick Sorensen? Is there any blitz packages that he's installed that he's impressed you with? What has been most impressive from Brandon Staley and Nick Sorensen as in two new defensive minds for the 49ers?
Yeah, it's still early on, so they're still working on installs and trying to figure out what the best is for them. But they're going back to more Niner-specific plays, which is a little bit less of blitz packages, a little more of man coverage and figuring out what is next for this team and what's the best fit for all these guys that are on here. The one thing I like about Nick Sorensen, though, is that he's just a football lover. He loves the game of football. Former safety himself. He gets it. He breathes football. Was a disciple in Seattle. Then came over here to the Niners. Is now with Kyle Shanahan. Nick Sorensen is just kind of a lover of football and really kind of a happy guy. You know, I covered Steve Wilks last year talking with him, and Steve was a little bit. Again, there was always that combativeness of his way of doing defense and the Niners' way of doing defense. That now is gone. Now it's Nick Sorensen's ideas, Brandon Staley's ideas, and the Niners' way of doing defense. And they have come together in a much better harmony, in my opinion, than it has with Wilks. Wilks was an experiment. Wilks was to try something new, bring a different flavor to this defense. That has gone out the window. Now we're back to Niners defense and implementing Brandon Staley as a lesser role. And Brandon Staley actually has been a little more vocal than Nick Sorensen on those sidelines. He was yelling at the cornerbacks a little bit, yelling at the defense. Nick is a little more of a mild-tempered guy, more of a teacher, more of a leader by example. And then Brandon is doing more of the cornerback-specific work, more of the secondary work with Daniel Bullocks, and just trying to figure out, what the best order is for that. But I think Nick Sorensen, while it's early on, I think he could be the right man for the job.
That's awesome to hear, because one thing that like the cohesiveness and them actually coming together and putting their brains together rather than, you're probably going to take my position by mid-year if I don't do things right. That also plays a factor. I'm not shocked that Nick Sorensen is the quieter one on this approach. From what I took from Nick Sorensen's press conferences and him as a coach, is he's more of the whiteboard. I'm going to teach you in the room, and then on the field, I'm going to explain it to you. I'm not as entertaining as I don't want the cameras on me. That's not what I want. I want to just coach football. I love football. Keep everything else away from me. So that's great to hear that they've came together and their defense is looking good.
Yeah, if you saw Nick Sorensen outside of the Levi Stadium, you would think eventually he's homeless. That's just kind of the guy how he looks. Like he just looks like kind of a
surfer dude.
Yeah, kind of a surfer dude. Very much like Kyle. Him and Kyle have the long hair and the backwards hat, and they're wearing, especially Nick. Nick's wearing hoodies in this summer heat. I don't know what's going on with Nick. Nick's cold or something. I don't know what's going on, but Nick's more of a chilled, laid-back guy and really much a lover of football and a teacher. And I think the Niners appreciate that approach more than Steve Wilks, who was a little bit more fiery, a little bit more in your face when there. Because I remember that was a big debate last year why he went up to the booth, right? Because he's like, I get a little too into the game. Well, the Niners kind of need that juice sometimes on the field, and I don't know if it's going to come from Nick. I think it's going to come from Brandon on the field this year. Potentially, we could see Nick and on the field, or on the sideline, I should say, instead of having one in the presser and one down in the field. They need someone to have that juice, absolutely, but they need to go about it the right way. And I think that Nick Sorensen, in the combination of Brandon Staley, who so far have really gotten along very well and really kind of found a mutual understanding of, we're going to do this together, we're going to collaborate. I'm the DC, I'm in charge, but I appreciate your input and what you bring to this team because you were a former head coach. You are a guy who's been there, done that, been in charge of men. And while it didn't work out as successfully in Los Angeles with the Chargers, he's still a very good cornerback and a guy who's a few years removed from having one of the better secondaries in Los Angeles with the Rams.
So this question comes from Kenny. So it's tied to the Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley. Is do you see Nick Sorensen? Is there any chance that Nick is the defensive version of McDaniels?
You know, no one's Mike McDaniels. no one. That man is one of one. No one is Mike. That man is a one of one creature. But I do think that Nick Sorensen is more of a teacher and X's and O guy like Mike is. Mike, never. Mike was a little bit more quirky. Nick's not as quirky. Nick's more of a laid back kind of guy. Mike is laid back, but he's definitely got a little weird nuances. I do think Nick could be a version of Mike McDaniels, but I don't know if he's like the guru that Mike was. Mike was a guru, a offensive juggernaut. Maybe Nick has a lot of those smarts, absolutely too. But like you said, he's an X's and O guy, a teacher, a leader, a guy who was a starting safety in the NFL, and players like on the Niners who have been there, done that, have a ton of experience, or even the young guys there, they appreciate former players in that position teaching them as well. That's what they love about Nick Sorensen. That's what Fred loves about Nick Sorensen, is that he's a guy that has come up through the ranks with the 49ers, gets it, but also has played multiple years in the NFL. And that's what makes a lot of sense for this Niners team, is that being coached by guys, and why they also love Darryl Tapp on that D-line, because Darryl Tapp was a guy that was about it. He would do practice with them. He would do drills with them. Nick Sorensen will do drills with them. I would not be surprised if he's out there maybe doing back pedals like Brandon Staley is.
And it sucks that they lost Darryl Tapp to the Commanders, because, man, he was a good. I thought he was a good coach, a good assistant D-line coach right there. And if anyone could do me a favor, put Nick Sorensen and put Brandon Staley on the Step Brothers bodies. That's literally, because the way Emil's explaining to him is they became best friends. They're doing karate in the basement. They're gonna build bunk beds together. So for them, that's how I see it. Is like these two like. Then that's great, because like obviously when a coaching staff comes together like that, typically the more ideas you could have, especially when there's opportunity for example, to stop Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. Brandon Staley got to see him 2 times a year. Mm-hmm. That is something like I'm going to be leaning on if I'm Nick Sorensen. So I'm glad that that's something that they're actually able to do. Emil, thank you for joining the show today. If you guys are not following Emil on Twitter, he's on Twitter, Emil Fragoso. Hope I'm saying your last name right. I hope I'm not butchering it every time I say it.
Oh, you're good, man. You're good. It's a hard name to say, so it's Emil Fragoso, Emiliano Fragoso on Twitter. I go by Emil though. Catch me on there, and catch us as well on Sacktown 1140 Sacktown Sports. We are the home of the Niners, home of the Kings. I know this is more of a Bay Area style thing, but we are home of the Niners and home of the Kings. We got to represent for my people and all we're doing there. And Marco, appreciate you having me on today. Love talking Niners and love talking stuff with fellow content creators like yourself.
Of course, man. Thanks for having us on. It looks like the chat liked it. Everyone's saying good things, man. Thanks for joining us. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your this Friday afternoon. Stay hydrated in this heat. Enjoy. Peace out.